10 minutes to describe a media that covers 1.45 billion people. Thank you very much for this introduction and for inviting me here. It's a great honor to be here on this prestigious global platform. We are talking about United Nations and 80 years, and with so much of conflict, bloodshed, and loss of lives around us, the world is rightly asking how relevant the United Nations is. And when I announced this on my social media that I was going to take part in this panel discussion on media and democracy and blah, blah, there were more than 2,000 comments. Majority of them really skeptical about the UN's role in today's world, given how Palestine, Ukraine, Sudan, and other parts of the world, they've just erupted in conflicts. But there were several hundred which also said, please tell the United Nations the story of the most impoverished people in India. Please tell the world from the platform of United Nations that the democracy is not properly functioning in India. So with this, I just want to place the responsibility, perhaps the burden of responsibility, back on the shoulders of the United Nations, that there are still millions of people in this world from east to west. And I can at least speak from my experience from reporting on my part of the world, there are still millions of people who look up to and look at United Nations for solutions. I have been invited here to speak on media and democracy. But before I do that, I want to take this moment to remember my colleagues in Gaza, in Palestine, who are no more amongst us. More than 200 of them have been killed over the course of last 22 months. And those of them who are still there reporting from Palestine, reporting every day, putting everything at stake, including their lives, they are perhaps also just counting their days. So I want to take this moment to appreciate their courage, their work, and also their service to humanity. Now, as I said, with 1.45 billion people, we are now the largest, most populous country on earth. And I feel like the battle of democracy is being fought in India. And also the democratic recession that we see, it's also been exemplified in India. I mean, although the United States is really giving us tough competition, but I feel like for democracy, the real battleground right now with 1.45 billion people is actually India. This perhaps is the best time to be a journalist in India and also the worst time. I'll take a couple of more minutes to explain why I'm saying this. So my subject is the media landscape in India. We have about 140,000 registered newspapers and periodicals. We have 22,000 daily publications. India's media scene is as vast as it is varied. It is a place where stories are told in 189 languages and dialects. If you talk about television, there are more than 900 channels in total, and 350 of those are dedicated to just news, many broadcasting around the clock. And there is a projection which says by 2026, India will be the world's 5th largest media market, both in print and broadcast media. And still, I'm saying that there is a crisis of information in India, because these hundreds of publications and thousands of journalists, what they're trying to do essentially is to suppress information, to misinform people, and to spread disinformation. And that's the story I want to tell you today. So the state of media and state of democracy has never been more worrying than what it is today. Despite the existence of hundreds of media organizations and thousands of journalists, India is going through a crisis of information. People are not getting information they deserve. And there are two sides to this media. One is a pro-establishment media, which I would say more than 95% of journalists right now And then there is, on the other side, there is a progressive free media. Now, when 95% of the people who have switched over to the dark side, who have agreed to become this part of the propaganda machinery of the current regime, the remaining 5% or the remaining 3-4%, they are under scanner, they are under danger. Anything you say about India, Indian government, Indian people, there is a price to pay. And trust me sitting here and telling you about the state of affairs in my country, it also has a price. So everybody who's speaking out a single word is taking a risk. Right before coming here, just a week before this 3-4% of the remaining media in India, this media reported on the wrongdoings, the corrupt practices of one of the richest men in the world. The ministry, first the man got an order, an ex parte order from the court, which means the journalists were not even heard. And it was quickly, within a matter of hours, it was implemented by a government ministry, which means the journalists were forced to delete 138 articles. I mean, thank God for the courts and for the judges that there is a stay on this order right now. There are 2 short videos I want you to see, and then I will explain to you about these videos.
ये विभाजन धर्म के आधार पर हुआ, लेकिन मैं आपको बड़ी स्क्रीन पर दिखाती हूं कि जिस मकसद से ये विभाजन किया गया था वो मकसद कभी पूरा ही नहीं हुआ। बंटवारे के वक्त पश्चिमी पाकिस्तान और पूर्वी पाकिस्तान से कुल 83 लाख लोग भारत में आए थे। 83 लाख, जो हम आपको बता रहे हैं एंट्री, ये 83 लाख पूर्वी पाकिस्तान से और पश्चिमी पाकिस्तान से मिलाकर, जबकि भारत से कुल 96 लाख लोग पाकिस्तान में गए। 96 गए थे, इधर भी और इधर भी। ये विभाजन का मकसद क्या पूरा हुआ 1947 में, यही हम पूछ रहे हैं। तो 96 लाख गए पाकिस्तान में और 83 लाख आए भारत। उस वक्त भारत में मुसलमानों की आबादी लगभग 4 करोड़ थी, लेकिन इसके बावजूद सिर्फ 96 लाख मुसलमान ही पाकिस्तान गए। बाकी मुसलमानों ने भारत को ही अपना देश माना, वो रुक गए।
So this lady anchor here in the video, she is talking about India's partition. There was very unfortunate and painful event that happened almost 80 years ago, which is one of the worst human tragedies in the history of humankind, which was the partition of India and Pakistan. This woman is trying to tell people that the story of partition is not complete, because the partition took place on religious lines. Then why we still have more than 200 million Muslims living in India right now, which means actively alienating them, actively inciting hatred and violence against them, so that there is one political party that could remain in power forever. I want my friend to play another video so that you can see how the current ruling party and the mainstream media, they are colluding with each other to actually kind of prepare an environment, almost a genocidal environment for India's minorities.
Passengers for flight.
Welcome to Guwahati City. हमारे देश में
So this video is from the BJP's Assam state Twitter handle. It is an official Twitter handle by this ruling party, which rules the northeastern state of Assam. And this video, as you can see for yourself, it says that if you do not continue to vote for the BJP, then Assam is going to look like this. In the state of Assam, we have the most number of Muslims living. Every third Assamese is actually a Muslim. So this is actually an open call for violence and hatred against the Muslims. So you saw a media clip, and then you saw the ruling party. So I'm just trying to say here is that by inciting violence and hatred, what they're trying to do is they're trying to protect Mr. Modi and this current government from answering questions, from accountability, because if you continue to hate a section, a segment of people, you do not need any accountability. It is the third term of Mr. Modi in power, and he continues to rule because he continues to tell people that there is an internal enemy within, and you need to fight this enemy. You don't have to ask questions of the government. I'm just going to take 30 more seconds, the grace 30 seconds. Which is that I want to conclude that we all agree that democracy rests on an informed citizenry. Citizens must know how governments perform, where policies succeed, and where they fail, in order to make fair choices at the ballot box. But the way Indian media is functioning, it is polarizing communities and undermining any possibility of any reconciliation or peaceful dialogue, especially in a diverse society like India, where unity in diversity has been the foundation of our democracy, and we have successfully practiced this for the almost past 80 years. In the Indian context, rebuilding trust in media is essential, not through control or censorship, but by strengthening transparency, accountability, and ethical journalism. On the sidelines of UNGA, it is vital to recognize that safeguarding democracy is not only about protecting elections or institutions, but also about protecting the credibility of information that binds citizens together in trust and peaceful coexistence. At 80, the United Nations reminds us that peace and democracy are inseparable. For India, safeguarding democracy requires restoring faith in the fourth pillar, the media, so that citizens can hold governments accountable and participate in democracy from a place of knowledge and not from misinformation. Thank you so much. I think it is the most important question that all panelists couldn't even address. And since I come from that part of the world where we are struggling with the challenges of democracy and how the way democracy has impacted and I would say the deficit of democracy in United States and the Western world in general is also impacting my part of the world because the Western world had set high standards for what a democratic society should be, that the leaders who are elected through the process of democracy should be held accountable to higher standards. The idea of liberty, the idea of rights, the idea of freedom. I think when all of this is compromised in the world, which we called, which sets the standards for other countries, then it works as a big setback for countries which are already struggling with democracy and democratic norms. For example, if I would say something in India as a journalist, I would always say, look, what's happening in America, how it happens in America, or how it happens in England. Now I no more can say that. Because now people who oppose a democratic structure, they say, look, what's happening in America? We are still better off. Look how America is falling or has fallen. Those kind of, phrases are being used for America. I don't know whether you all agree or not, but America is falling is kind of a phrase which is being used in my part of the world. So it doesn't really end up making all of us look better, feel better, or, hope for a more bright future. Someone like me gets to hear and see is from the Western lens, from journalists sitting outside of Turkey. So that's number one. So you don't really get to know what's happening. And that's why, Turkey wouldn't be even one of the, let's say, 20 headlines, 20 top headlines in a week. I hardly get to hear about Turkey unless there is a coup or unless there is an acute economic crisis. So the day-to-day stories, you don't get to hear. And number two is that the whole thing, the whole, catastrophe of Gaza, Palestine, it has brought us to a point where our tolerance to violence and our tolerance to injustice is so high now that anything that's happening in Turkey or anything that's happening in Russia or anything that's happening in India is so much lesser than what's happening in Palestine. So you feel like, okay, we can maybe live with what's happening in Turkey. We can live with what's happening in India. So I think one of the things that we really don't realize, and I was talking to my friend Behzad, and this came up, and kind of I thought I never got this idea, that how this whole Gaza thing has really risen our tolerance to injustice, violence, and darkness, and you are now judging, making Gaza as the standard for whatever else is happening in the world.